Unidad 4. La producción, la circulación y el consumo de versiones traducidas como género independiente. Manipulación de la traducción, comportamiento sistemático de la traducción. Son estos los temas vertebrales del enfoque comunicativo sociocultural del objeto de estudio de la traductología. La traducción involucra a traductores y traductólogos como género autónomo, desligado de formulaciones previas en el texto en lengua de origen. Se superan los binomios tradicionales de forma y sentido, traducción semántica y traducción comunicativa, extranjerización y domesticación. Traducción, manipulación de construcción. La traducción como manipulación, antes y después de la noción de manipulación. Antes, en el ámbito de los estudios de traducción, el pensamiento teóricamente informado posee antecedentes de tipo formal, lingüístico y textual. Pueden citarse las contribuciones de la Escuela de Leipzig y los modelos formalistas lingüísticos como el de Eugene Naira y Charles Taylor. Después, en la década de 1970, se consolidan los ejes de Lovaina y Tel Aviv. Por sus producciones se reconocen figuras como Susan Bassett, James Holmes y André Lefebvre. La noción de manipulación se enriquece con la contribución de la teoría de polisistemas. Antecedentes y proyecciones. Los antecedentes se ubican en el formalismo ruso y estructuralismo checo. Se intenta proveer un marco teórico descriptivo, por ello el concepto de corrección se anula y se impone en cambio el de aceptabilidad. Se procura la reconstrucción de las normas y del modelo dominante de traducción en un contexto y un tiempo dados a fin de comprender el criterio de aceptabilidad vigente. Nuevos horizontes. Se amplían los conceptos de lenguaje, texto y traducción en el seno de la traductología. Comienzan a estudiarse otro tipo de lenguajes como los naturales y los formales, otras textualidades o textos de cultura, y se complejiza la noción de traducción. La traducción se entiende como una operación cultural de resignificación de componentes formales y simbólicos. Un caso de traducción intersemiótica, The Last of Mohicans, James Fenimore Cooper, Michael Mann. The Last of the Mohicans, escritor estadounidense James Fenimore Cooper, 1789-1851. The Last of the Mohicans, novela histórica publicada en 1826, ilustración de la edición de 1896 por J.T. Merrill. Otros productos cómic. Otros productos película histórico-épica de 1992 dirigida por Michael Mann. Veamos alguna diferencia entre la novela de Cooper y la película de Mann. 3 muestra los avances y algunos tópicos para el contraste, novela y película.
It's not as I imagined it would be, thinking of it in Boston.
The frontier is the only land available to people. Out here they're beholden to none.
As a new land was being carved out of an untamed frontier.
Just dropped in to see how you boys is doing.
One man, defiantly courageous, stood his ground.
I thought all our colonial scouts were in the militia.
I ain't your scout. You sure ain't no damn militia.
One woman, fiercely independent, followed her spirit.
My father warned me about people like you. He said, do not try to understand them. Do not try to make them understand you.
Thank you so much.
They shared an adventure.
It was a war party. That means they're going to be attacking up and down the frontier.
That took them from the edge of the wilderness.
He saved us. We're alive only because of him. Are those the actions of a criminal?
And into each other's hearts.
Why didn't you leave when you had the chance?
Because what I'm interested in is right here.
You've done everything you could do to save yourself!
Stay alive, no matter what occurs. I will find you. No matter how long it takes, no matter how far, I will find you.
Academy Award winner Daniel Day-Lewis, Madeline Stowe, The Last of the Mohicans.
Penguin Popular Classics, The Last of the Mohicans, James Fenimore Cooper. Here we have the original text, I guess. Muestra 1. Last of the Mohicans. Well, I don't really know what this is about, but well, let's read it. Chapter 1. Mine ears open and my heart prepared. Prepared. The worst is worldly loss thou canst unfold. Say, is my kingdom lost? Shakespeare. It was a feature peculiar of the colonial wars of North America that the toils and dangers of the wilderness were to be encountered before the adverse hosts could meet. A wide and apparently an impervious boundary of forests served the possessions of the hostile provinces of France and England. The hardy colonist and the trained European who fought at his side frequently expended months in struggling against the rapids of the streams or in effecting the rugged passes of the mountains, in quest of an opportunity to exhibit their courage in a more martial conflict, but emulating the patience and self-denial of the practiced native warriors. They learned to overcome every difficulty, and it would seem that in time there was no recess, of the woods, so dark, nor any secret place so lovely, that it might claim exemption from the inroads of those who had pledged their blood to satiate their I don't know the pronunciation of this word. I must be honest, I don't really know it. Vengeance, I don't know, up to uphold the cold and selfish policy and the distant monarchs of Europe. Perhaps no district throughout the wide extent of the intermediate frontiers, I don't know, can furnish a lively picture of the cruelty and fierceness of the savage, warfare of those periods to the country which lies between the headwaters of the Hudson and the adjacent lakes. The facilities which nature had there offered to the march of the combatants were too obvious to be neglected. The latent sheet of the Champlain stretched from the frontiers of Canada deep within the borders of the neighboring province of New York, forming a natural passage across half the distance that the French were compelled to master in order to strike their enemies. Near its southern termination, it received the contributions of another lake, whose waters were so limpid as to have been exclusively selected by the Jesuit missionaries to perform the typical purification of baptism and to obtain for it the title of the Lake du Saint-Sacrement. The less zealous English thought they conferred a sufficient honor on its unsullied fountains when they bestowed the name of their reigning prince, the second of the House of Hanover. The two united to rob the untutored possessors of its wooded scenery of their native right to perpetuate its original appellation of Horicon, winding its way among countless islands, and embedded in mountains. The holy lake extended a dozen leagues still further to the south. I don't know how to read it. With the high plain there were interposed itself to the further passage of the water commenced a portage of as many miles, which conducted the adventurer to the banks of the Hudson, Orillas, at a point where, with the usual obstructions of the rapids or rifts, as they were then termed in the language of the country, the river became navigable to the tide, while in the pursuit of their daring plans of annoyance, the restless enterprise of the French even attempted the distant and difficult gorges of the of the Hylany, it may easily be imagined that the proverbial acuteness would not overlook the natural advantages of the district we have just described. It became emphatically the bloody arena in which most of the battles for the mastery of the colonies were contested. Forts were erected at different points that commanded the facilities of the road and were taken and retaken, razed and rebuilt, as victory alighted on the hostile banners. While husbandmen shrank back from the dangerous passes within the safer boundaries of the more ancient settlements, armies larger than those that had often disposed of the sceptres of the mother countries were seen to bury themselves in these forests, whence they rarely returned back in skeleton bands that were haggard with care or dejected by defeat. Though the arts of peace were known to this fatal region, its forests were alive with men, its shades and glens rang from the sounds of martial music, and the echoes of its mountains threw back the laugh or repeated the wanton cry of many a gallant and reckless youth as he hurried by them in the noontide of his spirits to slumber in a long night of forgetfulness. It was in this scene of strife and bloodshed that the incidents we shall attempt to relate occurred during the 30 years of the war which England and France last waged for the possession of a country that neither was destined to retain. The imbecility of her military leaders abroad and the fatal want of energy in her councils at home had lowered the character of Great Britain from the proud elevation of which it had been placed by the talents and enterprise of her former warriors and statesmen. Here refers to England. Pay attention to gender. No longer dreaded by her enemies, her servants were fast losing the confidence of self-respect. In this mortifying abasement, the colonialists, though innocent of her imbecility and too humble to be agents of her blunders, were but the natural participators. They had recently seen a chosen army from that country which, reversing as a mother, they had blindly believed invincible, I think, an army led by a chief who had been selected from a crowd of trained warriors for his rare military endowment, disgracefully routed by a handful of French and Indians, and only saved from annihilation by the coolness and spirit of a Virginian boy whose reproof has since diffused itself, with the steady influence of moral truth, to the utmost confines of Christendom. A wide frontier had been laid naked by this unexpected disaster. More substantial evils were preceded by 1,000 fanciful and imaginary dangers. The alarmed colonialist believed that the yells of the savages mingled with every fitful gust of wind that issued from the interminable forests of the West. The terrific character of the merciless enemies increased immeasurably the natural horrors of warfare. Numberless recent massacres were still vivid in their recollections, nor was there any ear in the provinces so deaf as not to have drunk in with avidity the narrative of some fearful tale of midnight murder, in which the natives of the forest were the principal and barbarous actors, as the credulous and excited traveller related the hazardous chances of the wilderness. The blood of the timid curdled with terror, and mothers cast anxious glances even at those children which slumbered within the security of the largest towns. In short, the magnifying influence of fear began to set at naught the calculations of reason, and to render those who should have remembered their manhood the slaves of the basest of passions. Even the most confident and the stoutest hearts began to think the issue of the contest was becoming doubtful, and that abject class was hourly increasing in numbers who thought they foresaw all the possessions of the English crown in America subdued by the Christian foes, or laid waste by the inroads of the relentless allies. When therefore intelligence was received at the fort which covered the southern termination of the portage between Hudson and the lakes, that Montcalm had been seen moving up the Champlain with an army numerous as the leaves on the trees, its truth was emitted with more of the craven reluctance of fear than with the stern joy that a warrior should feel in finding an enemy within reach of his blow. The news had been brought toward the decline of a day in midsummer by an Indian runner who also bore an urgent request from Monroe, the commander of a work on the shore of the Holy Lake, for a speedy and powerful reinforcement. It has already been mentioned that the distance between these two posts was less than 5 leagues. The route path, which originally formed the line of communication, had been widened by the passage of wagons, so that the distance which had been travelled by the son of the forest in 2 hours might easily be effected by a detachment of troops with the necessary baggage between the rising and setting of the summer sun. The loyal servants of the British Crown had given to one of these forest fastnesses the name of William Henry, and to the other died of Fort Edward, calling each after a favourite prince of the reigning family. The veteran Scotchman just named held at first with a regiment of regulars and few provincials, a force really by far too small to make head against the formidable, power of Montcalm was leading to the foot of his earthen mounts. At the latter, however, lay General Webb, who commanded the armies of the king in the northern provinces, with a body of more than 5,000 men. By uniting the several detachments of his command, his officer might have nearly double that number of combatants against the enterprising Frenchman who had ventured so far from his reinforcements with an army but a little superior in numbers. But under the influence of the degraded fortunes, both officers and men appeared better disposed to wait the approach of the formidable antagonists within the works than to resist the progress of the march by emulating the successful example of French at Fort Duquesne and striking a blow on their advance. Let's continue this reading. Of a lovely evening, whispered Duncan, how much should we prize such a scene, and all this breathing solitude at any moment. Cora, fancy yourselves in security, and what now perhaps increases your terror may be made conducive to enjoyment. Listen, interrupted Alice, the caution was unnecessary. Once more the same sound arose as if from the bed of the river, and having broken out the narrow bounds of the cliffs, was heard undulating through the forest in distant and dying cadences. Can any here give a name to such a cry? Demanded Howick, when the last echo was lost in the woods. If so, let him speak. For myself, I judge it not to belong to earth. Here, then, is one who can undeceive you, said Duncan. I know the sound full well, for often have I heard it on the field of battle, and in situations which are frequent in a soldier's life. 'Tis the horrid shriek that a horse will give us in his agony, oftener drawn from him in pain, though sometimes in terror. My charger is either a prey to the beasts of the forest, or he sees his danger without the power to avoid it. The sound might deceive me in the cavern, but in the open air I know it too well to be wrong. The scout and his companions listened to this simple explanation with the interest of men who imbibe new ideas. at the same time that they get rid of old ones which had proved disagreeable inmates. The two latter uttered their usual unexpressive exclamation, "Ha!" as the truth first glanced upon their minds, while the former, after a short musing pause, took upon himself to reply. "I cannot deny your words," he said, "for I am a little skilled in horses, though born there they abound. The wolves must be hovering above their heads on the bank, and the timorsome creatures are calling on man for help in the best manner they are able." And as he spoke in Delaware, Uncas dropped down in the canoe, a whirlbrand among the pack. "A fear may do what the wolves can get at to perform, and leave us with our horses in the morning when we shall have so much need to journey swiftly." The young native had already descended to the water, to comply when a long howl was raised on the edge of the river and was borne swiftly off into the depths of the forest, as though the beasts of their own accord were abandoning the prey in sudden terror. Uncas, with instinctive quickness, receded, and the three forests held another of their low, earnest conferences. "We have been like hunters who have lost the points of the heavens, and from whom the sun has been hid for days," said Hawkeye, turning away from his companions. "Now we begin again to know the signs of our curse, and the paths are cleared from briars. Seat yourselves in the shade which the moon throws from yonder beech. 'Tis thicker than that of the pines, and let us wait for that which the Lord may choose to send next. Let all your conversation be in whispers, though it would be better, and perhaps in the end wiser, if each one held discourse with his own thoughts for a time." The manner of the scout was seriously impressive, though no longer distinguished by any signs of unmanly apprehension. It was evident that his momentary weakness had vanished with explanation of a mystery which his own experience had not served to fathom, and that though he now felt all the realities of the actual condition, he was prepared to meet them with the energy of his hardy nature. This feeling seemed also common to the natives, who placed themselves in positions which commanded a full view of both shores, while their own persons were effectually concealed from observation. In such circumstances, common prudence dictated that Heyward and his companions should imitate a caution that proceeded from so intelligent a source. The young man drew a pile of the sassafras from the cave, and placing it in the chasm which separated the two caverns, it was occupied by the sisters, who were thus protected by the rocks from any missiles, while their anxiety was relieved by the assurance that no danger could approach without a warning. Hooker himself was posted at hand, so near that he might communicate with his companion without raising his voice to a dangerous elevation, while David, in imitation to the woodsman, bestowed his person in such a manner among the fissures of the rocks that his ungainly limbs were no longer offensive to the eye. In this manner hours passed without further interruption. The moon reached the zenith and shed its mild light perpendicularly on the lovely sight of the sisters slumbering peacefully in each other's arms. Duncan cast the white shawl of Cora before a spectacle he so much loved to contemplate, and then suffered his own head to seek a pillow on the rock. David began to utter sounds that would have shocked his delicate organs in more wakeful moments. In short, all by Hawkeye, and the Mohicans lost every idea of consciousness in an uncontrollable drowsiness, but the watchfulness of these vigilant protectors neither tired nor slumbered. Unmovable as that rock of which each appeared to form a part, they lay with their eyes roving without intermission along the dark margin of trees that bounded the adjacent shores of the narrow stream. Not a sound escaped them. The most subtle examination could not have told the breadth. It was evident that his excess of caution proceeded from an experience that not subtly on the part of their enemies could deceive. It was, however, continued without any apparent consequences until the moon had set, and a pale streak above the tree-tops at the bend of the river with a little below announced the approach of day. Then for the first time Hawkeye was seen to stir. He crawled along the rock and shook Duncan from his heavy slumbers. "Now is the time to journey," he whispered. "Awake the gentle ones, and be ready to get into the canoe. Well, canoe, I don't know, when I bring it to the landing place. Have you had a quiet night?" said Hawkeye. "For myself, I believe sleep has got the better of my vigilance. All is yet still at midnight. Be silent, but be quick." By this time Duncan was thoroughly awake, and he immediately lifted the shawl from the sleeping females. The motion caused Cora to raise her hand as if to repulse him, while Alice murmured in her soft, gentle voice, "No, father, no, dear father, we were not deserted. Duncan was with us. Yes, sweet innocence," whispered the youth. "Duncan is here, and while life continues or danger remains, he will never quit thee. Cora, Alice, awake! The hour has come to move." A loud shriek from the younger of the sisters, and the form of the other standing upright before him in bewildered horror was the unexpected answer he received. While the words were still on the lips of Heward, there had arisen such a tumult of yells and cries as served to drive the swift currents of his own blood back from its bounding course into the fountains of his heart. It seemed for near a minute as if the demons of hell had possessed themselves of the air about them, and were venting the savage humours in barbarous sounds. The cries came from no particular direction, though it was evident that they filled the woods, and as the appalled listeners easily imagined, the caverns of the falls, the rocks, the bed of the river, and the upper air. David raised his tall person in the midst of the infernal din, with a hand on either ear, exclaiming, "Whence, well, I don't know how to pronounce this word, whence comes this discord? Has hell broke loose, that a man should utter sounds like these?" The bright flashes and the quick reports of a dozen rifles from the opposite banks of the stream followed the incautious exposure of his person, and left the unfortunate singing master senseless on that rock where he had been so long slumbering. The Mohicans boldly sent back the intimidating yell of their enemies, who raised a shout of savage triumph at the fall of the gamut. The flash of rifles was then quick and close between them, but either party was too well skilled to leave even a limb exposed to the hostile aim. Hostile, I don't know. Duncan listened with intense anxiety for the strokes of the paddle, believing that flight was not their only refuge. The river glanced by with its ordinary velocity, but the canoe was nowhere to be seen on its dark waters. He had just fancied they were cruelly deserted by the scout, as the stream of flame issued from the rock beneath him, and a fierce yell blended with a shriek of agony announced that the messenger of death, sent from the fatal weapon of Hawkeye, had found a victim. At this slight repulse, the assailants instantly withdrew, and gradually the place became as still as before the sudden tumult. Duncan seized the favourable moment to spring to the body of Gamut, which he bore within the shelter of the narrow chasm that protected the sisters. In another minute the whole party was collected, in this spot of comparative safety. The poor fellow has saved his scalp, said Hawkeye, coolly passing his hand over the head of David. But he is a proof that a man may be born with too long a tongue. 'Twas downright madness to show 6 feet of flesh and blood on a naked rock to the raging savages. I only wonder he has escaped with life. Is he not dead? Demanded Cora in a voice whose husky tones showed how powerfully natural horror struggled with her assumed firmness. Can we do aught to assist the wretched man? No, the life is in his heart yet, and after he was slept a while he will come to himself and be a wise man for it. Till the hour of his real time shall come, returned Hawkeye, casting another oblique glance at the insensible body, while he filled his charger with admirable nicety. Carry him, Uncas, and lay him on the sassafras. The longer his nap lasts, the better it will be for him, as I doubt whether he can find a proper cover for such a shape on these rocks. And singing won't do any good with the Iroquois. You believe then that the attack was renewed? Asked Howard. Do I expect a hungry wolf will satisfy his craving with a mouthful? They have lost men, and 'tis the fashion when they meet a loss and fail in surprise to fall back. But we shall have them on again, with a new experience to circumvent us and master our scalps. Our main hope, he continued, raising his racked countenance, across which a shade of anxiety just then passed like a darkening cloud, will be to keep the rock until Monroe can send a party to our help. God send it may be soon. And under a leader that knows the India's customs. You hear our probable fortunes, Cora, said Duncan, and you know we have everything to hope from the anxiety and experience of your father. Come then with allies into this cavern, where you at least will be safe from the murderous rifles of our enemies, and where you may bestow a care suited to gentle natures on your unfortunate comrade. The sisters followed him into the outer cave, where David was beginning by his sighs to give symptoms of returning consciousness, and then commending the wounded man to their attention, he immediately prepared to leave them. Duncan, said the tremulous voice of Cora, when he had reached the mouth of the cavern. He turned and beheld the speaker, whose colour had changed to a deadly paleness, and whose lip quivered, gazing after him with an expression of interest which immediately recalled him to her side. Remember, Duncan, how necessary your safety is to your own, how you bear a father's sacred trust, how much depends on your discretion or care, in short, she added, while the telltale blood stole over her features, crimsoning her very temples. How very deservedly dear you are to all the name of Monroe. If anything could add to my own base love of life, said Hayward, suffering his unconscious eyes to wander to the youthful form of the silent Alice, it would be so kind an assurance. As Major of the 60th, our honest host will tell you, I must take my share of the fray, but our task will be easy. It is merely to keep these bloodhounds at bay for a few hours. Without waiting for a reply, he tore himself from the presence of the sisters and joined the scout and his companions, who still lay within the protection of the little chasm between the two caves. I will tell you, Uncas, said the former, as Hayward joined them. You are wasteful of your powder, and the kick of the rifle disconcerts your aim. Little powder, light lead, and a long arm seldom fail of bringing the death screech from a Mingo. At least such has been my experience with the creature. Come, friends, let us to our covers, for no man can tell when or where a Makwa will strike his blow. The Indians silently repaired to their appointed stations, which were fissures in the rocks, whence they could command the approaches to the foot of the falls. In the center of the little island, a few short and stunted pines had found a root forming a thicket into which Hawkeye darted with the swiftness of a deer, followed by the active Duncan. Here they secured themselves, as well as circumstances would permit, among the shrubs and fragments of stone that were scattered about the place. Above them was a bare, rounded rock, on each side of which the water played its gambols and plunged into the abysses beneath, in the manner already described. As the day had now dawned, the opposite shores no longer presented a confused outline, but they were able to look into the woods and distinguish objects beneath the canopy of gloomy pines. A long and anxious watch succeeded, but without any further evidences of a renewed attack. And Duncan began to hope that their fire had proved more fatal than was supposed, and that their enemies had been effectually repulsed. When he ventured to utter this impression to his companion, it was met by Hawkeye with an incredulous shake of the head. "You know not the nature of a Makwa if you think it is so easily beaten back without a scalp," he answered. "If there was one of the imps yelling this morning, there were 40, and they know our number and quality too well to give up the chase so soon. Hist! Look into the water above, just where it breaks over the rocks. I am no mortal if the risky devils haven't swam down upon the very pitch, and as bad luck would have it, they have hit the head of the island. Hist, man, keep close, or the hair will be off your crown in the turning of a knife. Heward lifted his head from the cover and beheld what he justly considered a prodigy of rashness and skill. The river had worn away the edge of the soft rock in such a manner as to render its first pitch less abrupt and perpendicular than is usual at waterfalls. With no other guide than the ripple, or I don't know, of the stream where it met the head of the island, a party of the insatiable foes had ventured into the current and swam down upon this point. I've lost track. My goodness. Oh my god, this is so complicated. But well, let's leave it here.